And hello, everyone. How are you doing? I'm calling this a win for freedom. Ian Murphy, I've had him on the show before, and this is a big uh, event. I want to call it a big event, big news story. The Iron Pig Smokehouse, you own that restaurant up in northern Michigan, correct? We have some big
Yep.
news. Put it out a couple days ago on social media, but there's a lot of people watching who may not know. What's the most recent thing that just happened in court? And for those of you who don't know, you've been embroiled with going after the state of Michigan because they came after you, and a lot of thousands of restaurants during COVID shut the state down basically. But you are one person who you said, no, I'm not going to take it. And you're still fighting it, right?
Yeah. So the Iron Pig takes power from the government again. That's kind of what I've been telling everybody,
Yeah.
and that's essentially what happened. So Judge Hunter brilliantly ruled for the Constitution back in January of 2022, in which he said that what we're now calling the gathering statutes, which is MCL 333.2253, that's the state health director's authority to limit the gathering of people for any purpose and may establish procedures. It's about 3 sentences long, 5 sentences at best. And that was what they used statewide for the mandates. Everything that everybody remember that we don't need to reiterate. For me specifically, was shutting down my restaurant, opening it back up, shutting it down, curfew, capacity restrictions, signage, all kinds of crazy stuff. In 2022, he gave us that great ruling. So in that ruling, he actually said that there are a couple other statutes that may suffer this same vulnerability to being unconstitutional. And what we ended up finding is that there are a couple of local health director statutes that
Oh,
they also use. So I mentioned 2253 from before.
yeah.
2453 is almost the exact same language. And if you just remove state health director with local health director, it's the exact same language. May limit the gathering of people for any purpose and may establish procedures. And what Judge Hunter found was that they were, that's just too broad of language. And it delegated the legislature, when they wrote this law back in 1978, improperly delegated, while well-meaning, improperly delegated too much authority and lawmaking writing ability to the executive branch, because the health department is an executive branch agency. And
So
that was the problem. And that was the argument from the beginning.
yeah, so these laws they weren't created when COVID happened. They were already in place, you're saying.
Well, so that is actually, there's a distinction there, right? So you got to kind of drill down to the minutia of that a little bit. So
Yeah.
what they did was they took a law, an existing law, and they layered on the agencies. So they took a broad language, may limit the gathering of people for any purpose, and use that to write additional law by using the state police, the liquor commission, the health department, Department of Agriculture, and MIOSHA, all in my case. They enabled those people to come after me. They jailed Marlena. They threatened
Yep.
me with jail. So they did actually write laws in the executive branch. And that's why Judge Hunter was saying that it was unconstitutional and it's a delegation violation. So
But the
he
but the
brilliantly ruled.
the legislature never did that. It wasn't the lawmakers, right? They didn't.
Correct.
That's the
Right.
important
So
part. Yeah.
yes. So
So,
and then I'll take it one step further, because there was actually 5 statutes that we asked Judge Hunter to look at. And what he ended up doing, and 2 of them were used directly against me and the Iron Pig. So I mentioned the 2453, he ruled that unconstitutional. He left 2451, which we call the eminent danger statute. So we've talked for a long time about this court case in 2020 that knocked down the Emergency Powers of the Governor Act. That one had the words imminent danger in them as well. Reasonable and necessary were also the words that the Supreme Court said that's just too ambiguous. Anybody can use the words reasonable and necessary to justify whatever they want. And that's what we found that the governor did, right? So
yeah.
again, these statutes just have too much ambiguity to them.
So if I remember correctly, because I was at the TV station at the time, Whitmer put all these rules and things into place, and then I think the Mackinac Center was involved in fighting all of that, and then that was struck down. Is that when then Whitmer thought, okay, how can I have more control or power? And then she got the health department involved and the other agencies. Is that when she correct, to try to get around things?
Absolutely. So if my timeline is correct, it was roughly on a Thursday, Friday, when the Supreme Court ruled the EPGA, as they call it, or called it because it's no longer in existence. They ruled that unconstitutional, and then pivot to Monday, the following week. Bob Gordon from the health department issued those emergency orders. So the executive orders were gone, and then they reissued the same things: the 6-foot distancing, the masks, and then started layering on more things than that. So what we have now is a state health director and local health director that can no longer limit the gathering of people for any purpose and may establish procedures. Can't do that any longer.
Wow. Now, I haven't looked. I've looked at some of the articles that have come out, but have you seen a response from Nestle or the state? Are they going to challenge this? I'm assuming they will, but have you read anything about what are they going to appeal this even further?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So this lawsuit, it was a declaratory action. So there was no money involved. We weren't seeking money damages. That's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
What this was is just asking the judge to look at the constitutionality of it. And this was against the local health department. So we won in 22 against the state health department. This was the local health department. So in our area, it covers 4 counties. 2 commissioners from each county make up a board of health. So the local board of health get to decide on whether or not they want to appeal this case. And it's my understanding that they deadlocked this last Tuesday morning at their last board of health 4-4 on whether or not to appeal. And naturally, the health department officials themselves want to appeal because, as we know, government doesn't like to concede power, and they've had to do it twice now. And I see them finding a way to figure out how to appeal this.
Would this have then, though, broader implications? God forbid we have something else happen. And I keep hearing people say bird flu, and I'm like, I don't want to hear it. But if something were to happen in the near future, I mean, can this be used as an example statewide of how you were successful? And if something were to happen again, I mean, to stop those powers from that would be, say, in Saginaw County or Isabella County, wherever it might be.
In general, the answer to that question is yes. Now, again, there are certain details at this time that I think somebody, let's say in Ottawa County, just for example, I don't know, throwing it out there. We know that health department has been embroiled in a lot of stuff lately. There has to be a food service establishment in that county or that health department's district that had a violation utilizing 2453 against them, because that's ultimately what got us the win. Was that the health department, our local health director, when they gave us the notice, they cited 2453 and 2451, which is the one that Judge Hunter left, which I'll briefly say he left because as constitutional, because there is a chance for me in this instance to go to circuit court, even though the state came in and said, absolutely not, we're not going to let you to go locally to the circuit court, even though that's what we eventually got to. But we had to go through the ringer of all those executive branch agencies, which are in administrative law, and all of those judges are appointed. They're not elected. So you can imagine who they're beholden to.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we never got a favorable ruling in any of our administrative hearings whatsoever.
Some have been asking, and because I posted the story right away, some are asking, oh, why is this business owner care now? Why is he doing this now? And especially, like you said, what we're talking about right now is not really about money. It sounds like it's more about what's right and what's right for Michigan as well. How do you answer the people who say, oh, that's in the past, leave it in the past?
Well, I've never quite seen anything like any of this.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do. We did the right thing when during the first part of the shutdown, March, April. May of 2020. We took our lumps. We did takeout only. We barely survived. Didn't take PPP for the first go around, and then ultimately it's been about our employees, and I've been saying it from the beginning. It's a fight for. It's not a fight against. I love our country. I just really dislike our government and how they've been doing everything. And we've cited examples from here in Michigan from the beginning of how they should have handled things. And it turns out Judge Hunter sort of affirms that. He says you need to at least give these folks notice, whether it's a business or a home, or like an instance that we cited in some of our first briefing was the Eaton County Health Department was going around putting notices on the doors where there were known positive COVID cases. And it was up to you or the other adults to decide whether they wanted to go into that or sorority or a restaurant, in my case.
So as of now,
my answer,
no,
my answer to that is it's for my employees, it's for my business and for my family. That's what it's always been about from the beginning. It's not been about money, but the reason we're still open and we're still able to fight this battle, if you want to call it that, is because of the amazing support and people that have patronized Iron Pig for the last 4+ years.
Absolutely. And it's, in my belief as well, doing the right thing. I've talked to business owners over the last couple of weeks, some who are no longer business owners because they lost their restaurant. And some are asking me now, and maybe you can or can't talk about this, or you've talked to other business owners. Is there anything that can be done now looking back and being like, the state literally destroyed my business or did this? And we're looking back now and like, this was not proper. This was not appropriate. Do any businesses, and you may not know this, I may have to ask a lawyer, but has it been talked about to seek any, I don't know, class action or any action against the state for what did happen during COVID? Because a lot of people lost a lot.
Yeah, a lot. So I have over 60+ names of restaurants, food service establishments, technically, as the health department calls them or licenses them,
Yeah.
from around the state that are interested in and want to join a class action lawsuit. Now, these are some that have gone out of business. These are some that have had violations. These are some like Marlena exactly is on this list, has been jailed because of it. What we're finding is obviously the wheels of justice do not move fast or swift.
No.
And sometimes we don't necessarily want them to. It's kind of like government, the legislative process. It's not supposed to be fast and quick, right? We want these drawn out conversations. The problem we're having, I shouldn't say problem. What the issue is right now is there are unresolved cases, mainly regarding T&V Associates, which is a Macomb County. Again, they're out of business. I think they may be back in business again, in a different name.
Okay.
But they have a case that's before Michigan Supreme Court that is reaffirming Judge Hunter's January 2022 ruling of the State Health Directors Authority being unconstitutional.
Okay.
So that is a big linchpin in a class action suit. So standing, mootness, and then being able to overcome and have these higher court rulings are all real key things to have in our tool belt when we go to take a class action to the Court of Claims, because that's where it's going to have to go. And the Court of Claims is the swampiest of all swamp places.
Yeah. Yeah. I've learned a lot in the last year about that. Okay. So just hold on and stand by there for business owners. And I asked you the last time I talked to you, but I think even people who were maybe supporting a lot of lockdowns or mask wearing or whatever, they've opened their eyes. I hope we've learned a lesson and look back at everything, especially when it comes to so forth education, that we won't allow ourselves to be in this situation again. I would hope, because I posted a video or a photo. Remember when they had literally the Lowe's or whatever, you couldn't buy the plant seeds. And I posted a photo of it. And someone said, why are you bringing that up again? I'm like, I don't think we should ever forget what happened. Do you think we learned a lesson as a society, but especially a state? Because we were one of the worst when it came to this.
We were one of the worst. We were one of the most absurd.
Yeah.
One of the most arbitrary and most hypocritical. I think those are all wonderful adjectives to use about how our state government handled COVID during that time. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people's eyes have been opened. Unfortunately, I think not enough eyes have been
Yeah.
opened.
Yeah.
If my advice for anybody moving forward always would be, take everything with a grain of salt. A lot of times the people that are giving you information may not necessarily have your best interest at heart. It doesn't mean that people in authority don't know what they're talking about, but um, be patient, because that's ultimately what we found out, I think, with COVID was a lot of the things that were instituted weren't necessary. And nobody ever wanted to capitulate on a lot of those things, the masking and the
Yeah.
social distancing and some of that stuff. I mean,
Well,
it just
the 6 foot rule, I think the 6 foot rule thing or whatever it was came out recently in testimony somewhere that Fauci admitted they just kind of made it up out of thin air.
right. Exactly. Exactly. And it's unfortunate that it has to come out, almost 4 years later, these things. But it goes to show you what our society's reliance on government and the authority that government provides, or quote unquote
Sad.
authority.
Last thing, how are you you're still taking lots of risk by speaking out, but there's the average person. I meet people all the time that they're scared to speak out on many different issues, societal or policy or whatever, because they're afraid they'll be demonized or so forth. Myself, I get a lot of hate from people, but even the average person, what do you say to people who are scared? I mean, some don't want to lose their jobs, but I think we need, as a society, just have more open conversation. What can we do to fuel that? Because sometimes when people open their mouths to be like, "Oh, you're this, you're that, you're that," I think we all just need to have a free flow of conversation. And you weren't afraid to do it. I think people are looking up to you for that.
I can't speak to the looking up to me part of it. What I can say, there's a couple of things to address there. And I think, the first part of it is peer pressure is enormous. And I think that was a huge weapon. It was weaponized during COVID because of the community aspect to it, right? It was so viral that I'm doing my part. Why aren't you doing yours? Was a
Yeah.
huge part of it. And a lot of that still lingers in some of these things. And unfortunately, it's very political now. So I think going into an election year, especially, some people are unwilling to give up some of those things. And now, unfortunately, I mean, you see it on the college campuses. A
Yeah.
lot of these protesters are wearing, N95 masks and other things like that. So it's difficult. I know, I understand. I've had a friend of mine that lost a job with the Liquor Commission because
Wow.
he was voicing his support online for me. I've had another person be called into their office again because of somebody sent their boss screenshots of their support of the Iron Pig during the first, the worst part of the shutdowns in the fall of 2020. Peer pressure is amazing. Some people have been able to withstand it. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, for me, it was a matter of, can I withstand that, or should I do something about all of this? So at least at the end of the day, my business does go away, goes bankrupt because of whatever decisions I have made. At least I can rest my head on my pillow at night knowing that I did as much as possible as I could with what I had at that time. And it just so happens I have an amazing attorney who knew nothing about health law, a little bit about liquor law, and just enough naivete between the two of us to take on something that has turned out to be a huge win 2 times over, and hopefully changes the way public health is administered in Michigan.
Gotcha. Well, I think people are looking up to you. They're, congratulating you, and it's people are beginning to talk more. So I appreciate that. And keep me updated on what happens with this case. And I need to get in touch with the other case at the Macomb County business. I think I've talked to them before when I was at the TV station, but I need to look into that because that's going to be a big issue as well. But I wish you all the best. And I haven't been to the restaurant yet. I'm going up north in about a month. I'm going to stop in.
Yeah, definitely also look into the T&V Associates case
Yes.
because the health department gave up their appeal against us because we were on a track to go to the Court of Appeals.
Oh.
They got a win with T&V Associates. And then in the Court of Appeals, their win of constitutionality got overturned. That's why they ended up giving up, because they had the win over here that ended up getting overturned. So they played themselves. So now this case is going up to the Michigan Supreme Court. I haven't heard if it's been put on the docket yet. I hope it's going to be sometime. I almost said this season, but this year. So I guess it kind of does seem like seasons at this point. It does. Just like, you know, the stuff keeps coming back around. But please, if you get a chance, brother, come up here. And I just want to say that there has not been a lot of chatter about this in the media.
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. And I think that's why not? You put out a news release, and obviously that was your side. But what media? I saw there was a newspaper. Was it Petoskey, maybe?
Yeah, so our local, that's our local news. So Gaylord,
okay, but why
Herald
this
Times
should be a statewide issue, the Detroit stations, because this is a big issue. Traverse City, Alpena, they should be covering this?
It's an interesting juxtaposition because when they were threatening me with jail, when they were taking my licenses, when they were trying to fine me $5,000, they were all about it. They, you know, it was above the fold, one of the top things, and everything always had COVID statistics were curbed at the end of it.
Yep.
You know, trying to make it sound like I was responsible for Otsego County COVID numbers going up.
Yeah.
The silence is sort of deafening at this point, and I've tagged them in some tweets trying to kind of bring them along a little bit. But I will tell you, really, the only ones that seem to be interested, besides the folks that, you know, if there were sides in this issue, the folks that are on the winning side, my side, and it seems like they're mostly conservatives, mostly Republicans. There are a few of those outlets have run a story, but everybody else hasn't. You know, Newsweek the Daily Beast ran a story on me because I had a Kiss Me I'm Contagious t-shirt that we did for a St. Patty's Day party in 2021.
Wow.
But do they think to want to tell the entire story? No, they don't. And this is why I was saying earlier, you know, take everything with a grain of salt when information is being fed from you, whichever avenue that happens to be. But, you know, it makes me appreciate independent journalists, podcasters, radio folks that are willing to talk about these issues. Even now, you know, COVID, talking about this stuff 4 years later, I think there is a bit of, you know, people are tired of talking about it. I mean, I know I'm tired of talking about it, but that's no excuse.
No, and that's one reason why I walked away from the media. And I dealt with it a lot whenever we would have to offer a correction. Say we did a 3-minute story to lead the 6 p.m. news. That correction would be a 20-second story at the end of the next day's 6 p.m. news. So it should have been equal to the coverage we gave it, and it never was. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what's happening. I mean, even just in the last 4 or 5 years and everything that I've been involved with. And then, I mean, you and I could have a conversation for probably 2 hours about this, but I do find it fascinating. And I do believe that the independent, the podcasters, people like you that are going out, striking out on your own, doing different things. You know, this maybe sound like the Mutual Admiration Society right now, but I don't care. You know, I appreciate what you're doing, if I can say that without sounding too gratuitous.
No, you can say that because I know there's some in the as I call them corporate media or whatever. They're not too happy with me, but like again, I don't care. I now know what's right and what's wrong, and if I mess up, I'll call myself out, and I've done it many times. So yeah,
yeah, and we all have a family to support too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you go. Tell all the mothers in your world happy Mother's Day, and keep me updated on your case as well. And I will get with the lawyers with that other case that's headed to the Supreme Court. I'll get up on that.
You got it. Sounds good. Thanks, Dave.
Okay. Thank